So how did our ancient ancestors live back then? Because this is the key to the question. Well, they lived in groups of 40 to 50 people, 10 or 12 families, and they would have a territory of about 200 square miles, 400 or 500 square kilometers, within which they wandered. They'd camp for a while in one place, and when they were done there, they'd walk 10 or 15 miles to the next campsite and live there for a little while, and then when they were done there, they'd move on to the next one. And so they would go on round and round through these various campsites within their territory, down through the seasons, down through their lifetimes, down through the centuries, down through the eons. At that time, human beings were basically in a kind of dynamic equilibrium with their environment. Every morning, the women would go off together in a group, just like we saw with the sandbush women earlier, foraging. They would be going out with the babies on their backs, and they would be collecting, yes, nuts, berries, fruits, various kinds of leaves, and so on. And also they would be digging up underground structures, tubers in particular, but of a special kind, and other ones like onions, the kinds of things we think of as being onions and so on, that kind of thing. They would also gather animal matter, and I'm deliberately using a vague term because you wouldn't find much of this in the ordinary supermarket. They would be catching things that they could do with their bare hands. Lizards, snakes, snails, tortoises, creatures like that. And eggs, of course. Eggs have always been part of the human diet, and they would be eggs, ostrich eggs, bustard eggs, flamingo eggs, all kinds, whatever they could find. Now, I do stop right there, because sometimes people say to me, the guy's crazy. He's telling us to eat frogs and snails and puppy dogs' tails. And I'm saying, well, no, that's not what I'm saying, although the French do come pretty close. What I am saying is that when we understand the nutritional profile of this, then we can try and emulate it in today's world, such that we are conforming to the same specification that our body expects to receive. And the good news is, it is quite possible to do it just by buying and utilizing and eating the kinds of things that we are used to finding in our shops, but making the right kind of intelligent selection once you've heard what I have to say. So the women would carry out their foraging. They'd be away 2 or 3 hours. They would come back carrying something like 15 to 20 pounds, 7 to 10 kilos of foodstuff they'd collected. They would be providing something like 80% of the food supply for the tribe. The men would go out most days, and they would be doing something like what the sand bushman we saw, setting a trap. He might go out scavenging, fighting off the lions and the vultures over the carcass of a zebra and carrying away the carrion. Or indeed, he might be trying to hunt something. He would be after an antelope or an eland or any of the larger creatures that are out there. And sometimes he would come back successful, and sometimes he would be unsuccessful. But the men always went out, or pretty much always went out alone, and they weren't terribly successful, and they provided something like 15 to 20% of the food supply, almost entirely animal matter, like we've just talked about. So how does this translate? How does this translate into a food specification in today's world? Well, that is going to be the subject of the next video.
Everything Geoff Bond says in these videos and a whole lot more is to be found in his book, Deadly Harvest. Check it out at www.deadlyharvest.com.